My niece wore my $4,000 wedding dress as a Halloween costume and laughed at me saying, "You already used it." I made her pay in ways she never expected. My wedding dress cost $4,000. I paid for it in installments over 8 months, $50 at a time into a separate account I labeled the dress because I didn't want to forget what I was working toward. It was ivory, floor length, hand beaded along the bodice. With lace sleeves my seamstress spent 3 fittings getting right. I got married in it on a Saturday in October, and when I walked down the aisle my husband Reggie cried before I even reached him. After the wedding I had it professionally cleaned, boxed, wrapped in acid-free tissue paper, and stored in the closet of our spare bedroom. I plan to keep it for my daughter someday, or just to have, because some things you keep not because they're useful, but because they remind you of the best day of your life. My niece Tatum is 23. She is my brother Lenny's only daughter, and she has been a problem since she could talk. She wore my sister-in-law Philomena's pearl earrings to a concert and lost one in the grass. She took Reggie's portable speaker to a beach trip and brought it back full of sand with a cracked screen. She used my mother-in-law Annie's cashmere scarf as a picnic blanket and returned it stained with mustard. Every single time Lenny made excuses. He'd say she didn't mean it. He'd say she was young. He'd say material things shouldn't matter more than family. He said that line so many times I could hear it before he opened his mouth. Last October, Reggie and I went on an anniversary trip. My brother offered to check on the house while we were gone because we had a cat that needed feeding. I gave him the spare key and didn't think twice. When we came home, everything didn't notice wrong. When I went in, spare was get off. The dress box was there, but it was open. The tissue paper was bunched on one side instead of folded the way the preservation company had done it. I pulled the box down. The dress was inside, but it wasn't the same dress. There were dark stains on the hem, like dirt, and something sticky. 3 beads along the bodice were missing. The left sleeve had a tear at the seam, small but visible, like someone pulled it too hard getting it on or off. The whole thing smelled like sweat and cheap perfume. I stood in that closet holding my wedding dress, and I knew exactly who did it. I called Lenny. He said Tatum had stopped by once to help feed the cat. I told him what I found. He went quiet, then said he'd ask her. An hour later, he called back. Tatum admitted it. She needed a costume for a Halloween party last minute. She thought my dress would make a funny dead bride costume. She tore the sleeve getting into it. The stains were from the party. The beads came off on the dance floor. She put it back because she figured I wouldn't notice. Lenny told me this like it was a minor inconvenience. I told him the dress cost $4,000 and it was irreplaceable. He said, "It's just a dress. You already wore it. What were you going to do with it? Wear it again?" I told him to put Tatum on the phone. The first thing she said was, "I didn't think it was that big of a deal." I told her she owed me $4,000. She laughed. She said she didn't have that kind of money. I told her she could figure it out the same way I did, $50 at a time over 8 months. She said I was being ridiculous. Then she said, "It's not like it was brand new. You already used it." 2 days later was my mother's birthday dinner. The whole family was there. Lenny, Philomena, Tatum, my other brother Grant, Reggie, everyone. I brought my mother a gift, a framed photo from my wedding day. Me in the dress, Reggie beside me, my mother in the front row. She teared up and said it was beautiful. Then I said, "I'm glad I still have the photo. The dress itself is destroyed. Tatum wore it as a Halloween costume while I was out of town and returned it ripped, stained, and missing beads." My mother looked at Tatum, Grant looked at Tatum, Reggie looked at Lenny. Tatum's face turned red and she said, "I already told you I was sorry." I said, "No, you told me it wasn't a big deal. That's not the same thing." Lenny jumped in and said this wasn't the time or place. My mother put the frame down and said, "Tatum, is that true?" Tatum didn't answer. My mother said it again. Tatum said yes. My mother, who has never raised her voice at a grandchild in her life, looked at Tatum and said, "You will pay your aunt back every dollar. I don't care how long it takes." The table went silent. I gave Tatum 1 week to come to me with a plan. On day 6, my phone buzzed and it was Tatum. She wanted to meet at a coffee shop near her apartment to talk about a repayment plan. I showed Reggie the message. He said, "I'll believe it when I see it." Part of me wanted to be wrong about her. Part of me still remembered Tatum at 7, sitting on my lap braiding my hair at Thanksgiving. I drove there the next morning with my guard down. She walked in 10 minutes after I sat down, jeans and a sweater, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked tired. She sat across from me and didn't pull out her phone, which for Tatum is a sign of deep respect. She looked at me and said, "I know I messed up." Just like that. No excuses, no eye roll. I felt something in my chest loosen. She said she'd been thinking about it all week. She'd picked up extra shifts and wanted to figure out how much she could set aside each month. I told her she didn't have to do it all at once. $50 a month, the same way I'd saved for it in the first place. She nodded and said, "That's fair." For about 30 seconds I thought we were done. Then her whole body changed. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and a small half smile crept across her face. The kind of smile that tells you the person sitting across from you has been rehearsing something. She said, "But I talked to my dad, and he said you can't actually make me pay for something that was a gift." I felt the air leave my lungs. Those weren't her words. That was Lenny's argument, polished up and handed to her like a script. I said, "It wasn't a gift. It was my dress in my closet in my house." Tatum didn't even blink. "You gave Dad the key. That's basically permission." I could see it then. Lenny had sat her down and walked her through exactly what to say. The tired look, the "I know I messed up," all of it was the opening act. I stayed calm because I knew the second I raised my voice she'd run back to Lenny and say I was crazy and aggressive. I said, "Tatum, this isn't a legal case. This is about respect. You took something that mattered to me and you ruined it. You're 23 years old." She rolled her eyes. She said, "See, this is why nobody wants to borrow stuff from you. You make everything such a big deal." I stood up. I picked up my bag and said, "You're right. Nobody should borrow anything from me, and nobody will, starting now." I walked out without looking back. I sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel until they stopped shaking. The shaking wasn't fear. It was the kind of anger that sits right behind your ribs and doesn't let you breathe all the way. I called my mother before I made it to the first stoplight. I told Chaya everything. The rehearsed apology, the script, the eye roll. I told her Lenny didn't just defend Tatum after the fact this time. He coached her. He sat her down and turned what could have been a real apology into an ambush. When I finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. Then Chaya said, in a voice so calm it almost scared me, "I'll handle your brother." Chaya called Lenny that night and told him she knew he had coached Tatum to say the key was permission. Lenny tried to deny it. Chaya said, "Don't insult me. I raised you. I know when you're lying." She listed every single thing. Philomena's earrings, Reggie's speaker, Annie's scarf, the dress. You taught her that other people's things don't matter, and now she believes it. Lenny told her she was taking sides. You always favored her. That was Lenny's go-to move whenever he ran out of arguments. My mother didn't take the bait. She said, this isn't about favorites. This is about a girl who destroyed a $4,000 dress and laughed about it. If you can't see the problem, you are the problem. And Lenny hung up on her. My brother Grant called me the next evening to tell me about it. Then he said, there's more. Lenny called me looking for backup. He told me you're blowing this out of proportion. My grip tightened on the spoon I was holding. I said, what did you say? Grant said, I told him I saw the box. I told him it looked like someone dragged it through a parking lot. Grant had stood in my spare room closet the week before, holding the dress up under the light. He'd said 2 words then. That's bad. That was all. But the look on his face had said everything else. Then Grant told me what Lenny said in response. It's still just fabric. Grant paused, like he wanted me to feel the weight of it, and I did. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about where my brother stood. Admitting the dress mattered meant admitting his daughter did something wrong, and admitting his daughter did something wrong meant looking at himself. Grant said it better than I could have. I think he knows Tatum was wrong. He just can't admit it because that would mean admitting he failed as a parent. I stood at my stove with the pasta boiling over and I didn't move. Reggie came in and turned the burner down because Grant was right. Lenny was never going to come around on his own. That call was never coming. That night at the table, Reggie asked me what the plan was. I said, Tatum doesn't respond to feelings. Lenny doesn't respond to feelings. Every time I try to explain why this matters, they turn it into me being too emotional about a thing. I need to take feelings out of it. He said, so what do you do instead? I said, I make it a fact. The next morning, I called the preservation company that had cleaned and boxed my dress after the wedding. I explained the situation. The woman on the phone was quiet for a second and then said, I'm sorry that happened to your dress. That one sentence from a stranger almost made me cry. She said they could send a written damage assessment with side-by-side photos. They still had the originals from when they first preserved the dress. The report came back 3 days later in a PDF attached to an email. $4,200 to replace the dress with an equivalent gown. The photos were laid out side by side. On the left, my dress the day they cleaned it after my wedding. Perfect and white and clean. On the right, the same dress now, with stains circled in red, the torn sleeve marked with an arrow, the missing beads counted and listed in a note at the bottom, all on company letterhead. I printed 3 copies. One for Tatum, one for Lenny, one for my mother. I put each in an envelope, wrote their names on the front, and mailed them the same afternoon. No note. The numbers said everything. Tatum had spent her whole life counting on nobody keeping receipts. Now I had receipts. 2 days later, Reggie was on the couch next to me when his phone lit up on the coffee table. He picked it up, looked at it, and his whole face changed. He turned the phone toward me. It was a text from Tatum. Can you talk some sense into your wife? She's tearing the family apart over a dress. I read it twice. My 23-year-old niece, who destroyed my wedding dress, who ran her father's script on me in a coffee shop, had gone around me completely and texted my husband. She went straight to Reggie like he was some kind of manager she could complain to. About an hour later, his phone buzzed again. Same name, Tatum. Honestly, if your marriage is so fragile that a dress matters this much, maybe the problem isn't me. I put my hand on Reggie's arm. Reggie set the phone down and said, I'm done being quiet about this. She doesn't get to talk about our marriage. When Reggie gets loud, he's frustrated. When he gets quiet like that, he's made a decision. He typed a message and showed it to me before he sent it. Don't ever message me about my wife again. You destroyed something she worked 8 months to pay for, and you haven't apologized once. If you have something to say it to her face. Tatum didn't reply. Not even those 3 little dots. Less than an hour later, Reggie's phone rang. Lenny, coming in hot. You had no right to talk to my daughter that way. Reggie said, calm as anything. Your daughter had no right to message me about my marriage. We're done talking. And hung up. 2 days later, I was at my desk eating lunch when my phone rang. Philomena, my sister-in-law, who has been married to Lenny for almost 20 years and is the quietest person in every room. I honestly couldn't remember the last time she had called me about anything that wasn't a birthday or a holiday. I picked up. She said in a voice almost a whisper, I need to tell you something. I could hear her close a door in the background, like she was making sure she was alone. Then she said, Tatum wore the dress to the party and posted photos. I saw them before she deleted them. My chest got tight. She had fake blood on the veil. She was laughing in every single one. She tagged it, Dead Bride Energy. I closed my eyes. Dead Bride Energy. My wedding dress. The dress I walked down the aisle in while my mother cried in the front row. Then Philomena said the part that made my hands go numb. Lenny asked me not to tell you. Lenny had seen the photos. He'd seen his daughter mocking my wedding in my wedding dress with fake blood on my veil. And his response wasn't to call me or apologize or make Tatum take them down. His response was to make sure I never found out. I thanked her. I told her I knew that call wasn't easy. She said, I know Lenny is your brother, but what Tatum did was wrong, and him covering for her makes it worse. Then, please don't tell Lenny I called you. I said I wouldn't. I called my mother. Mom, I need you to set up a family sit-down. Everyone in one room. This ends this weekend. Chaya was quiet for 2 seconds. I'll make the call. Lenny tried to say he was busy. Chaya said, I didn't ask if you were free. I said be here. Saturday night, I organized everything. The damage assessment, the screenshots, Philomena's description of the deleted photos. Tatum's whole defense relied on everyone forgetting the details. I wasn't going to let anyone forget. Reggie asked if I was nervous. I said I was tired of being the reasonable one. Sunday came and I drove to my mother's house with Reggie in the passenger seat and the folder on my lap. The living room was arranged the way my mother always arranged it when she wanted everyone present. Chairs pulled in, the good couch cleared off, the TV off so there was no excuse to look anywhere but at each other. Lenny was on the couch closest to the window with Philomena beside him. Tatum wedged between them like a kid waiting outside the principal's office. Grant was in the armchair near the bookshelf, elbows on his knees. Reggie and I sat on the smaller couch. Chaya was in the high-backed chair at the head of the room, the one that used to be my father's. Nobody spoke for what felt like a full minute. I opened my mouth, but Lenny beat me to it. He sat forward and put his hands up like he was about to make a speech. I just want to say that this has gone way too far. Tatum made a mistake. She's 23. She shouldn't be treated like a criminal over a costume. He said it like he'd practiced it in the car on the way over. I stood up. I hadn't planned to stand. This isn't about a costume, Lenny. This is about a pattern. I opened the folder and laid the damage report flat on the coffee table table where everyone could see it. The letterhead at the top, the photos side by side, my dress before and my dress after. I read the number out loud. $4,200. That is what it costs to replace what Tatum destroyed. Not what I'm guessing. What a professional assessed, in writing, with photos. I let the number sit in the room. Then I reached back into the folder and pulled out the screenshots. I held them up so the room could see, and I read them out loud. The first one, then the second. Honestly, if your marriage is so fragile that a dress matters this much, maybe the problem isn't me. Chaya's face tightened like someone had pulled a string behind her jaw. Grant leaned forward, breathing slowly through his nose like he was trying not to say something he'd regret. Reggie sat completely still. Lenny looked at Tatum like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. You texted Reggie? Tatum said fast. I was just trying to fix things. I said, no, you were trying to get my husband to shut me up. I turned to Philomena. Can you tell everyone what you told me? Philomena didn't move right away. She looked at Lenny for half a second. Then she turned to the room. Her voice was soft but clear. Tatum posted photos from the Halloween party wearing the dress. She had fake blood on it. She was laughing. She tagged it Dead Bride Energy. She deleted them after she got caught. The room went completely still. Not the uncomfortable kind of still. The kind where everyone stops breathing at the same time. Chaya turned her head slowly and looked at Tatum. Dead Bride Energy? Tatum's face crumbled. The mask she'd been wearing all afternoon fell apart at once. She started to cry. Real crying. The kind where you fold into yourself. Lenny pushed off the couch fast and pointed at me. This is a setup. You brought her here to humiliate her. I didn't flinch. No. I brought her here because for 23 years, every time she breaks something, you tell everyone it doesn't matter. It mattered when it was Annie's scarf. It mattered when it was Reggie's speaker. It mattered when it was the earrings. And it matters now. Then Tatum wiped her face with the back of her hand. She looked straight ahead. Not at me, not at her father, just at some point on the wall across the room. And she said, Dad told me it would be fine. The room shifted. It was like the air moved sideways. Lenny froze. Not slow. All at once. His arms still crossed, his jaw still tight, but his eyes wide and locked on his daughter. Tatum kept going. When I told him I was going to wear the dress, he said it was just sitting in a closet and nobody would notice. He said she probably forgot she even had it. I called him the night before the party. He said, go ahead. She won't care. Every person in that room heard those words land. Go ahead. She won't care. My own brother. He told his daughter to take my wedding dress because I had already used it. Lenny was shaking his head before she finished. That's not what I said. Tatum looked at him for the first time. Yes, it is. Lenny's face lost its color. He turned to Chaya. My mother was looking at him with an expression I have never seen on her face. It wasn't anger. Anger is hot. This was cold. Chaya said, you gave her permission to take your sister's wedding dress? Lenny swallowed. I didn't think it was a big deal. Chaya didn't blink. You didn't think a $4,000 wedding dress was a big deal. Lenny went right back to the only line he'd ever had. She already wore it. That's when my mother stood up. She pushed herself out of that high-backed chair, and at her full height she said, I wore my wedding dress once too, Leonard, and if anyone had touched it, your father would have had their head. Sit down. She used his full name. He sat down. He dropped onto that couch like his legs gave out. Then Grant spoke for the first time all afternoon. You knew the whole time. You knew she was going to take it, and when it came back ruined, you acted like you had no idea. You let her take the fall by herself. Lenny didn't answer, and then Philomena moved. She didn't say anything. She just quietly slid herself from the middle of the couch to the far end, putting a full cushion of space between herself and her husband. It was the loudest thing anyone had done all afternoon. I looked at Tatum. Did you know what you did was wrong before or after the party? She pressed her lips together. Before, but Dad said it was fine, so I thought it was fine. Something in my chest reorganized. Tatum was wrong. She'd posted those photos and laughed about it, but she was also 23 and had never once in her life been told by her father that her actions had weight. Every time she crossed a line, Lenny moved the line. The person who owed me the biggest apology wasn't her. It was him. I looked at my brother. You owe me an apology before she does. You gave her permission to take my dress. You watched me confront her and said nothing. You coached her to say the key was permission. You told Philomena to stay quiet. Every step of this, you made it worse. Lenny opened his mouth. I could see him reaching for the same tired sentence, but before a single syllable left his lips, Chaya's voice cut through the room like a knife through paper. Don't you dare say it's just a dress in my house. Lenny closed his mouth. Then Tatum stood. She walked across the living room toward me, her hands shaking at her sides. I'm sorry. Not because Grandma told me to. Because I saw the photo you gave her of the wedding and I saw how you looked in that dress, and I ruined that. Her voice broke. I'll pay you back. I don't know how long it'll take, but I'll do it. I nodded. I didn't hug her. I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't. Not yet. I said, thank you. That's all I ever needed to hear. Then I turned to Lenny. He was still on the couch, arms crossed, staring at the floor. My mother said, Leonard, your sister is waiting. Lenny looked up. For the first time, his eyes were wet. He said, I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I said, yeah, you should have. That was all I gave him. I picked up my folder. Reggie stood up beside me and took my hand. My mother gave me a small nod, the kind that says, you did what you needed to do. In the car, Reggie asked if I was okay. I thought about it. The dress was still in that box in the spare bedroom closet, stained and torn and missing beads, and no amount of money was going to turn it back. But the dress was never the thing. The thing was in the framed photo on my mother's table now. Me in ivory standing next to the man who cried before I reached him, who was beside me in this car right now, who had been beside me the whole time. And Tatum will send the first $50 by Friday.